The studio lights burned hot, the audience buzzing with anticipation as Real Time with Bill Maher kicked off. Bill, perched at his desk with that trademark smirk, leaned into his opening monologue, tossing out quips about the latest political chaos. The crowd lapped it up, but the energy shifted when he introduced his first guest, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, the firebrand from Texas's 30th District. She strode onto the set, her tailored blazer sharp, her smile polite but guarded. The applause was warm, but you could feel the undercurrent. Something was about to go down. Bill wasted no time. "Jasmine, welcome," he said, his tone already laced with that needling edge. "You're one of the new faces of the Democratic Party. Young, passionate, outspoken. But don't you think all that emotion sometimes gets in the way of, actually governing?" The audience chuckled, a few claps punctuating the jab. It was classic Maher, half joke, half challenge, designed to provoke. Jasmine didn't flinch. She crossed her legs, leaned back slightly, and fixed him with a look that was all steel. "Bill, I'm not sure passion's the problem," she said, her voice steady, deliberate. "Maybe the issue is folks like you mistaking conviction for chaos. Passion's what drives change. You don't get progress by sitting back, sipping coffee and snarking." The audience gasped, then erupted in applause. A few hoots rang out. Bill's smirk faltered just for a second. He recovered quickly, leaning forward. "Okay, but let's be real," he said. "When you've got people out there crying on the House floor or shouting about systemic this and that, it starts to feel like a performance. Doesn't that dilute the message?" The dig was pointed, and the crowd murmured, sensing the tension. He was testing her, seeing if she'd crack under the spotlight. Jasmine's eyes narrowed, but her smile stayed cool. "A performance? Bill, lived experience isn't a script. When I talk about systemic issues, I'm not playing to the cameras. I'm speaking from reality. My reality. My constituents' reality. You might not get that from your cushy studio, but out in Dallas, people feel this stuff every day." The audience roared, some leaping to their feet. She wasn't just pushing back. She was dismantling his framing, line by line. Bill shifted in his seat, clearly not expecting the precision of her counter. All right," he said, raising a hand, trying to steer the conversation. "But you're young, you're a woman, of color in Congress. Don't you think leaning so hard into identity politics risks alienating people who might otherwise listen?" It was a classic pivot, one he'd used before to trip up guests. The crowd quieted, waiting for her response. Jasmine tilted her head, her voice dropping to a measured cadence. "Identity politics? Bill, let me break it down. When I walk into a room, my identity walks in first, whether I like it or not. People see a black woman, a young woman, before they hear my title. You don't get to pick and choose when that matters. The question is, why does it bother you so much when we talk about it?" The studio erupted again, louder this time, the energy electric. She wasn't just holding her ground, she was setting the terms. Bill's face tightened, his usual cool cracking. "I'm not bothered," he shot back, a little too quickly. "I'm just saying, if you want to win over the middle, maybe dial back the lecture." The audience hissed, a few boos cutting through. He was losing them, and he knew it. Jasmine, though, didn't budge. She leaned forward now, her voice, calm but razor-sharp. "The middle, Bill. The middle's tired of being told their struggles don't matter because they don't fit your narrative. You want to talk winning? Start listening." The studio crackled with tension, the audience's cheers still echoing as Bill Maher scrambled to regain control. His jaw clenched, betraying the irritation he tried to mask with a forced chuckle. "Listen, Jasmine," he said, his tone sharper now. "I'm all for passion, but when it's just shouting into the void, it's not winning hearts and minds. It's noise." The jab landed awkwardly, the crowd's murmurs turning hostile. He was doubling down. but it felt desperate. Jasmine's eyes glinted, her composure unshaken. She tilted her head, letting his words hang for a beat before responding. Noise, Bill? That's what you call it when people demand to be heard? Funny how it's only noise when it's coming from folks who don't look like you or talk like you. The audience erupted, a wave of applause crashing over the set. A few shouts of, "Preach!" cut through. She wasn't just sparring, she was exposing the cracks in his logic, and the crowd felt it. Bill leaned back, his smirk returning, but it was strained. "Come on, don't make this about race or gender," he said, waving a hand dismissively. "I'm talking strategy. You want to change minds. You meet people where they are, not where you wish they'd be." It was a slick pivot, one he'd used to dodge accusations of bias before, but Jasmine wasn't biting. She leaned forward, her voice low, deliberate, cutting through the studio's hum. "Meet people where they are? Bill, that's exactly what I'm doing. My constituents aren't sitting in ivory towers debating theory. They're living the consequences of policies you critique from a distance. You want strategy? How about acknowledging that the system doesn't treat everyone the same? That's where the real conversation starts." The crowd roared again, some standing, their energy feeding her momentum. She was turning his own rhetoric against him, and it stung. Bill's face reddened, his cool slipping further. "All right, but you're proving my point," he snapped, his voice rising. "You're preaching, not persuading. You think you're going to change the world by calling everyone out?" The audience hissed, the boos louder now. He was losing them completely, and the desperation in his tone was palpable. He pointed at her, a rare break in his usual polish. "You're not in Congress right now. This is a talk show. Lighten up." The crowd gasped, the air sucked out of the room. Jasmine's expression didn't waver, but her eyes burned with controlled fury. "Lighten up?" she repeated, her voice deadly calm. "You invite me here, take shots at my work, my identity, my people, and when I push back, I'm the one who needs to chill? That's the game, isn't it? Women like me are too much when we don't play by your rules." The studio exploded, the applause so loud it rattled the set. A chant of, "Jasmine! Jasmine!" started in the back, spreading fast. Bill tried to interject, his voice drowned out. "That's not what He started, but the crowd wasn't having it. He shot a glance at the producers, who looked as rattled as he did. Jasmine sat back, her posture regal, letting the moment breathe. She'd flipped the script, and everyone knew it. But Bill wasn't done. He leaned in, his voice cutting through the noise. "You're twisting my words. I'm saying you're alienating people who could be allies. That's not a game. It's reality." Jasmine didn't miss a beat. "Allies, Bill? Real allies don't need me to tiptoe around their feelings. They listen, they learn, they show up. You're not mad I'm alienating anyone. You're mad I'm not making you comfortable." The audience was on its feet, the energy chaotic, electric. Bill's smirk was gone, replaced by a scowl. He opened his mouth to fire back, but the segment. Producers signaled a hard cut to commercial. The lights dimmed, the crowd still buzzing. Jasmine's gaze didn't leave Bill's, her point etched in the silence. What would he come at her with next? The studio lights flared back up, the audience still crackling with energy as real time returned from the break. Bill Maher, visibly rattled, adjusted his tie, trying to reclaim his composure. Jasmine Crockett sat across from him, her expression serene but unyielding, her gaze locked on his. The crowd's chants of her name had faded, but their intensity hadn't. Bill forced a tight smile, his voice clipped. "All right, Jasmine, you've got the room. But let's cut to the chase. Calling out people like me, doesn't that just deepen the divide? You're not building bridges here." Jasmine's lips curved slightly, not a smile but a challenge. "Bridges, Bill? You don't build bridges by ignoring the cracks in the foundation. You're not upset I'm calling you out. You're upset I'm doing it on your stage, in your time." The audience erupted, applause thundering through the set. A few shouts of, "Tell him!" rang out. She leaned forward, her voice steady but searing. "You invited me here to spar, but you didn't expect me to hit back this hard. That's not division. That's accountability." Bill's eyes narrowed, his patience fraying. "Accountability? Sounds like you're just settling scores," he shot back, his tone biting. "You come on my show, turn it into a soapbox, and expect me to just nod along? This isn't your congressional podium." The crowd hissed, the boos sharp and immediate. He was swinging hard, but it felt like a misstep. The audience wasn't with him, and Jasmine's calm only amplified his agitation. She tilted her head, her voice dropping to a measured cadence. "Settle scores? Bill, I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to speak truth. You're the one who keeps framing my existence, my passion, my identity, as a problem. Why is it so hard for you to hear a young black woman say, 'This is my reality, and it matters'?" The studio roared, the applause so loud it shook the rafters. Some audience members were on their feet, clapping furiously. Jasmine's words weren't just landing, they were resonating, cutting through the noise. Bill leaned forward, his voice rising, a rare edge of defensiveness breaking through. "I'm not saying your reality doesn't matter. I'm saying you're delivering it like a lecture, and it's not landing with the people who need to hear it. You want change? Stop preaching to the choir and start persuading the skeptics." It was a calculated move, trying to paint her as dogmatic, but the audience wasn't buying it. The boos grew louder, a chant of, "Let her speak," starting to build. Jasmine didn't blink. "Persuade the skeptics? Bill, I'm not here to coddle folks who refuse to listen. My job isn't to make you or anyone else feel good about the status quo. It's to challenge it. You call it preaching. I call it clarity." The crowd exploded again, the energy chaotic, uncontainable. She sat back, her posture composed, but her eyes burned with conviction. Bill's scowl deepened, his control slipping further. He pointed at her, his voice sharp. "You're dodging the point. You're not persuading, you're performing. And it's not working." The audience gasped, the tension spiking. Jasmine's expression hardened, but her voice stayed calm, lethal. "Performing? Bill, the only performance here is you pretending this is a fair fight. You set the rules, you pick the framing, but when I flip it, suddenly I'm the problem? That's not skepticism. That's fragility." The studio went wild, the applause deafening, the chants of her name swelling. Bill's face flushed, his cool completely gone. He opened his mouth, but the producer's voice crackled in his earpiece, a warning to rein it in. He ignored it, leaning in, his voice low, almost a growl. "You're pushing it, Jasmine. You want a fight? You're getting one." The crowd's roar drowned out the rest, the energy teetering on the edge of chaos. Jasmine didn't flinch, her gaze steady, her presence commanding. The producers signaled frantically, but Bill wasn't backing down. The confrontation was spiraling, and the question hung heavy. How far would this go? The studio was a powder keg, the audience's roar a living thing as Bill Maher leaned forward, his voice a barely controlled snarl. "You think you can just hijack my show, Jasmine? Turn it into your personal crusade?" The accusation was raw, his composure shattered. The crowd booed, their fury palpable, but Jasmine Crockett sat unmoved, her eyes locked on his, her calm a stark contrast to his. Unraveling. The producer's frantic signals were ignored. Bill was in too deep, and Jasmine wasn't backing down. She tilted her head, her voice steady, cutting through the chaos. "Hijack? Bill, you invited me here. You threw the punches, but now you're mad I'm not on the floor. This isn't your show anymore. It's a conversation, and I'm not here to play nice for your ego." The audience erupted, applause and cheers shaking the set. A chant of "Jasmine" surged, unstoppable. Her words were a blade, precise and unrelenting, exposing the power dynamic he'd tried to control. Bill's face twisted, his voice rising. "You're out of line," he snapped, pointing at her. "You don't get to come on my stage and lecture me like I'm the enemy. You're a guest, not the host." The crowd's boos drowned him out, a wave of disapproval crashing over him. The producer, now visibly panicked, stepped onto the set, whispering urgently in Bill's ear. He brushed her off, his eyes blazing. "No, she doesn't get to do this," he said loud enough for the mics to catch. The audience gasped, the tension spiking to a breaking point. Jasmine's expression didn't waver. "Out of line? Bill, the only line I'm crossing is the one you drew to keep folks like me in check. You wanted a fight, but you didn't expect me to win." The studio exploded, the applause so loud it felt like the walls might crack. She leaned forward, her voice calm but searing. "You call me a guest, but I'm not here for your permission. I'm here for the people who see themselves in me, who know what it's like to be dismissed, diminished, and still stand tall." The crowd was on its feet, the energy electric, chaotic. Bill's scowl deepened, but he faltered, the weight of her words sinking in. The producer grabbed his arm, her voice sharp. "Bill, we're done. Cut it." He shook her off, but the fight was draining from him. He looked at Jasmine, then at the audience, their faces alive with defiance, and for the first time he seemed small. "You're done here," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "Get off my set." The audience gasped, then roared in protest, boos and shouts of "Let her stay!" filling the air. Jasmine didn't move, her gaze steady, her presence commanding. "If you want me gone, Bill, that's your call," she said, her voice ringing clear. "But you don't get to erase what I said. This moment, it's bigger than your show." She stood, her movements deliberate, and the crowd went wild, their applause a thunderous wave. She walked off, head high, leaving Bill frozen at his desk. The aftermath was immediate. Clips of the confrontation went viral, racking up millions of views within hours. Social media buzzed with Jasmine Crockett, her poised takedowns dissected and celebrated. Pundits called it a career-defining moment, while critics tried to paint her as aggressive, but the narrative didn't stick. Her message, about identity, conviction, and refusing to be silenced, resonated, sparking debates in living rooms and boardrooms alike. Jasmine, unfazed, took to X, posting, "Spoke my truth. No regrets. Keep pushing." The post garnered thousands of replies, supporters flooding her with praise. Bill's show took a hit, the backlash fierce. Viewers called for apologies, and his next episode opened with a terse acknowledgement. But it was too late. Jasmine had shifted the conversation, her calm defiance a blueprint for standing firm. She returned to Congress, her focus unbroken, her voice louder than ever. The confrontation wasn't just a moment, it was a movement, proof that truth, spoken boldly, could outlast any stage.